hello there. I'm back. Today we are going over the United States Constitution. There is so much to learn from our founding documents, and I like to go over these works because it helps me understand the country I live in and why things are done the way they are. So I hope this will be helpful for you too. Before we get started, I just want to let you know that I am by no means an expert on the U.S. Constitution. All the information in this video is based on my own opinion, shaped by the research that I did for it. So take everything I say with a grain of salt and do your own research. And I'll link all my research material in the description below. So let's get started. So what is the U.S. Constitution anyway? The U.S. Constitution, as drafted in 1787 and ratified in 1788, is a document that contains 7 articles or sections. These articles establish the framework for the federal government, covering the legislative or lawmaking branch, executive branch, judicial branch, interstate relations, amendment process, federal supremacy, oaths, and ratification. The Bill of Rights and subsequent amendments were added later, starting in 1791, and we'll go over those in another video. But the core document consists of these 7 articles. It tells us how the government should be set up so it can fulfill the country's purpose stated in the Declaration of Independence, which is protecting civil liberties. It establishes the 3 branches of government we just mentioned and the consent of the governed. Now, why did we need a constitution? You may have noticed that the Constitution was not approved until 1788, but the U.S. declared independence in 1776, so how was the country being run that whole time? Well, we had a first attempt at a supreme law with the Articles of Confederation, but it proved to be insufficient in governing the new nation, so we needed something better. That's when the Continental Congress called the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. The convention was prompted by a proposal which highlighted the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. Alexander Hamilton and James Madison were among those who advocated for a revision or a replacement of the Articles. The delegates were appointed by their respective state legislatures with the mandate to address the need for a stronger federal government. The United States Constitution was written during this convention, which took place from May 25th to September 17th, 1787. It was ratified or approved on June 21st, 1788, when New Hampshire became the 9th state to approve it, meeting the requirements for adoption under Article 7 of the Constitution. It officially went into effect on March 4th, 1789, when the new federal government began operations. The United States Constitution was primarily drafted by the group of delegates at this convention, with James Madison often credited as the father of the Constitution because of his significant contributions. Other key figures involved in its drafting included Gouverneur Morris, who wrote much of the final text, and members of the Committee of Detail, such as John Rutledge and James Wilson. So let's get into the document itself. It starts with the preamble. This opening states the purpose and principles of the document. It says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." So let's break this down. "We, the people of the United States," shows that this Constitution derives its authority from the people not a king or a group of elites. It reflects the idea of consent of the governed and popular sovereignty. So this government is created by and for the people of the United States. In order to form a more perfect union means that the goal with this document is to create a stronger, more unified nation than what existed before under the Articles of Confederation. Established justice means they are aiming to create a fair legal system for all that protects individual rights. Ensure domestic tranquility means that this document is meant to promote peace and stability in the country and to prevent internal conflicts and unrest. Provide the general welfare indicates a commitment to improving the well-being of all citizens by supporting economic prosperity. Secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity states the goal to protect individual freedoms and rights, not just for the current generation, but for future generations. Then the final statement, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America, declares that the people are enacting and establishing this Constitution as the supreme law to govern the nation. So this whole opening is stating the core objectives of unity, justice, peace, defense, welfare, and liberty. It reflects the framers' intent to create a government that serves and is accountable to the people because the first system that they tried wasn't really working that great. Then we come to the articles, and I'm just going to give a few minutes summary of each one. There isn't time to go into detail on each section, so if you hear something you want to know more about, please do your own research. And again, I'll be linking all my research material in the description if you're curious. Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution establishes the legislative branch of the federal government, which is responsible for making laws. It creates two branches of Congress consisting of the House of Representatives and the Senate. The House is based on population, with representatives elected every 2 years, ensuring direct accountability to the people. The Senate gives each state 2 senators, serving 6-year terms, providing stability and equal state representation. Congress holds the power to make laws on matters like taxation, commerce, defense, and general welfare, outlined in Section 8. Key powers including levying taxes, regulating interstate and foreign commerce, declaring war, and establishing federal courts. Representatives must be at least 25 years old, U.S. citizens for 7 years, and residents of their state. Senators must be at least 30, citizens for 9 years, and a resident of the state they serve. The House makes revenue bills and can impeach officials, while the Senate tries impeachment cases and approves treaties and major appointments. Article 1 also details how laws are made. Bills must pass both chambers and be signed by the president or survive a veto override. It also sets checks like requiring a quorum, which is the minimum number of members that need to be present to vote on a law, for business and mandating public records of proceedings. Section 9 lists limits on our congresspersons, such as prohibiting bills of attainder, which are basically bills that would allow Congress to bypass due process, so that's not allowed. They also can't pass ex post facto laws, which are laws that would punish someone for a certain action that was legal at the time it occurred, but is now illegal. And it also prohibits titles of nobility. The necessary and proper clause in the first article allows Congress to make laws needed to execute its powers, giving flexibility while checks like presidential vetoes and judicial review ensures balance. This structure reflects the framers' aim to create a strong but limited legislature responsive to democratic needs and state interests. This article focuses on Congress's structure, powers, and constraints. Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution establishes the executive branch, headed by the President, and outlines its powers, duties, and structure. This article creates the office of the President and Vice President, elected every 4 years through the Electoral College system. The President must be a natural-born U.S. citizen, at least 35 years old, and a resident for at least 14 years. The Electoral College balances state influence and population with electors equal to each state's congressional representation. The President is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, with authority to direct military actions, though only Congress can declare war. The President can make treaties with Senate approval, appoint major officials like ambassadors and judges, also with Senate's approval, and grant pardons for federal crimes. The President enforces laws, delivers a State of the Union address to Congress, and can convene or adjourn Congress in certain situations. They also meet with foreign ambassadors, shaping foreign policy. Article 2 also ensures the executive is powerful but constrained. The Senate's role in treaties and appointments checks presidential power, and the President can veto legislation, but Congress can override that veto with a 2/3 vote. Are you starting to see how the branches keep each other in check and balance out power? The President can be removed through impeachment for high crimes and misdemeanors by the House of Representatives, but has to be convicted by the Senate. The Take Care clause in this article requires the President to faithfully execute laws, giving broad authority to run parts of the government. The executive also has implied powers like issuing executive orders to manage federal operations, but these are subject to judicial and congressional oversight. This article also states that the President must take an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, emphasizing the role as a steward of the nation's legal framework. Article 2 also balances a strong executive with democratic accountability, reflecting the framers' intent to avoid both tyranny and weak governance. Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution establishes the judicial branch, creating the federal court system and defining its authority. It creates the Supreme Court as the highest federal court and authorizes Congress to establish lower federal courts, such as district and appellate courts. It gives judicial power to those courts, ensuring an independent branch to interpret laws. Judges serve for life as long as they display good behavior, protecting them from political pressure, and their salaries cannot be reduced as a way to ensure impartiality. The federal courts have jurisdiction over cases involving federal law, the Constitution, treaties, and disputes between states, citizens of different states, or foreign entities. This includes cases like ambassador disputes and controversies where the U.S. is a party. The Supreme Court has original jurisdiction in specific cases, like in state disputes, but primarily serves as an appellate court, which reviews decisions made by lower courts to make sure there was no errors made that affected the outcome of the case. Article 3 also ensures the right to a jury trial for federal criminal cases and defines treason. The judiciary's power of judicial review allows courts to strike down laws or actions violating the Constitution. The judiciary is kept in check by Congress, which can regulate the size and structure of lower courts and impeach judges for misconduct. The President appoints judges with Senate approval. Article 3 also gives Congress flexibility to shape the court system while ensuring an independent judiciary to uphold the rule of law. The purpose of Article 3 is to create a judiciary to resolve disputes impartially, protect constitutional principles, and balance the powers of the legislative and executive branches. It reflects the framers' intent to safeguard justice without creating an overreaching judicial authority. Article 4 of the U.S. Constitution addresses the relationships between states and their obligations to each other and the federal government, ensuring unity and cooperation in the federal system. Section 1 states the full faith and credit clause, which requires states to respect the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of other states, such as court judgments and legal documents like marriage certificates. Congress can regulate how these are enforced. Section 2 gives us the Privileges and Immunities Clause, which ensures citizens of one state are entitled to the same rights as a citizen in another state when traveling or residing there, preventing discrimination. It also mandates that states extradite fugitives across state lines and, in the past, required the return of escaped slaves, which is now obsolete thanks to the 13th Amendment. Section 3 of Article 4 allows Congress to admit new states into the Union, but prohibits forming new states from existing ones without their consent, or carving states out of other states' territory without approval. Congress also has authority over federal territories and property, like military bases or public lands, giving it broad management powers. Section 4 is the Guarantee Clause. It ensures every state has a Republican form of government, meaning representative democracy. It also obligates the federal government to protect states from invasions and from domestic violence, such as riots, balancing federal and state authority. Article 4 also promotes national unity by fostering cooperation among states while preserving their autonomy. It prevents interstate conflicts, ensures equal treatment of citizens, and reinforces federal oversight for stability. The article reflects the framers' aim to create a cohesive nation without undermining state sovereignty. Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution outlines the process for amending the Constitution, providing a way to adapt the document if needed. This article establishes 2 methods to propose amendments and 2 methods to ratify them, which means approve them. Proposals can be made by a 2/3 vote in both the House of Representatives and the Senate, or by a constitutional convention called by 2/3 of the state legislatures. Ratification is required by 3/4 of the states, either through their legislatures or state conventions, as determined by Congress. This dual process ensures broad consensus across the federal and state levels. The amendment process is deliberately rigorous to prevent hasty changes, but flexible enough to allow updates. The 2/3 proposal requirements and 3/4 ratification requirement means that supermajorities are needed to accomplish this, reflecting the framers' intent to balance permanence with adaptability. The convention option has never been used. All 27 amendments have come through the Congress method. Article 5 includes specific restrictions. No amendment can deprive a state of its equal representation in the Senate without that state's consent, safeguarding smaller states. Article 5 also ensures the Constitution is capable of evolving with societal needs, but only through widespread agreement. It balances stability with change. The process empowers both Congress and the states while also reflecting the federal system's shared authority. Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution establishes the supremacy of the federal Constitution and outlines key principles for the relationship between federal and state governments, as well as the obligations of public officials. It starts with the Supremacy Clause. This declares the Constitution, federal laws, and treaties as the supreme law of the land, binding state and federal courts. This ensures that federal law takes precedence over conflicting state laws, creating a unified legal framework. Judges in every state must uphold the Constitution, reinforcing federal authority while respecting state rules within the federal system. This article ensures that all debts and engagements entered into by the United States before the Constitution's adoption, so while they were still under the Articles of Confederation, remain valid. This provision maintained financial stability and credibility for the new government. Article 6 also requires all federal and state officials, legislative, executive, and judicial, to take an oath to support the Constitution, ensuring loyalty to the federal framework. It also prohibits having to pass any religious test in order to hold public office, preventing discrimination based on faith. The article solidifies the Constitution's authority as the foundation of the U.S. legal system, balancing federal power with state participation. By prioritizing federal law, it prevents fragmentation, while the oath fosters unity. It reflects the framers' intent to create a cohesive national government rooted in constitutional loyalty. Article 7 of the U.S. Constitution addresses the ratification process for the Constitution itself, outlining how it should take effect. This article states that the Constitution would become effective upon ratification by 9 of the 13 states through special state conventions, rather than state legislatures. This was a deliberate choice to ensure broad but achievable support, bypassing the unanimous consent required under the Articles of Confederation, which proved to be impractical. They used state conventions composed of delegates chosen by the people in order to ensure a more direct democratic process for ratification. This approach allowed the Constitution to reflect the will of the citizens rather than the state officials who might resist giving power to a stronger federal government. Article 7 was crucial for establishing the Constitution as the foundation of the U.S. government. By requiring 9 states for approval, it balanced the need for widespread agreement with the practical necessity of moving forward with government affairs. The 9-state approval was met in June 1788 when New Hampshire ratified and the Constitution took effect, with the remaining states eventually joining. Article 7's design facilitated a quick transition from the weaker Articles of Confederation to a stronger federal system. It reflected the framers' intent to create a durable framework, ensuring the Constitution's legitimacy through popular consent. So that's the United States Constitution. I hope this video helped you get a better understanding of the U.S. Constitution and why it is so important that we defend and uphold it. It protects civil liberties and controls the government's power through the separation of powers and through the consent of the governed. We give this consent by electing representatives, but this requires our participation. Our participation starts with understanding the foundational principles of our nation. I highly encourage you to continue learning about our Constitution and the history that led up to it. You can start with what I've linked in the description of this video. Our nation's past is the key to our future. If you like this video, I hope you'll give it a like, maybe subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Oh, I forgot the book. I was going to read it.
Grab it.
Okay. It's in my purse. It's the little constitutional handbook thing.
Purse out here.
Yeah, and the backpack thing that I take to work. Article 3 also ensures the right to a jury by trial for federal crimes. Article 3 also ensures the right to a trial by It reflects the framers' intent to safeguard justice without creating an overreaching It reflects the framers' intent to safeguard justice without creating an overreaching judicial.